This is my old Ford pickup truck, and I'm here to tell you 3 things I wish I knew before I bought this truck. So this truck is a 1994 Ford F350. It's got the 7.3 liter IDI motor. It's not the Power Stroke. It's a 4x4, and it's got the upgraded Dana 60 front end that the F250 and the F150s had the twin I-beam front end, so this is a little bit of an upgrade and it sits a little bit higher. So the first thing that I wish somebody had told me before I bought this truck, and it was actually my biggest concern when I was buying this truck, is the fuel efficiency. And it's not for the reason that you might think. This truck has turned out to be the most fuel efficient truck I have ever owned, which is unbelievable. I had a first gen Tacoma. It was a little 3.4 liter V6. I had a 4th gen Ford Ranger with a little 4 liter. Like, these are both little tiny trucks. This truck almost weighs 7,000 pounds, and it's the most fuel efficient truck I've ever owned. My first opportunity to test the fuel economy on this truck was actually when I bought the truck. I flew across the country and I drove this truck home, and I actually towed my Fox Body Mustang behind me. And this truck stayed true at 17 mpgs the entire drive home. I was towing a car, we were going through some serious hills, and this thing didn't come off, about 13 liters per 100 kilometers, which is absolutely insane for a, what is it, a 30-year-old diesel truck. I was really concerned that I wouldn't be able to afford this truck, and it has turned out to be the most fuel efficient truck I've ever owned. And I think the fuel economy scares a lot of people off of driving old vehicles. Not that my Ranger or my Tacoma were bad on gas, they are a little bit older, and people think newer vehicles are the end-all be-all when it comes to fuel economy, but I've learned that that isn't the case. This truck has been great on gas, and I have got no complaints so far. So I kind of wish people had warned me that, I didn't actually need to be that worried about the fuel economy. This truck is good on gas, and that was not going to be an issue with driving this truck. So the second thing I wish people had warned me about driving an old truck is just how drastic of a change it is coming from a newer vehicle. This truck, especially a heavy-duty truck like this one, it is built for durability and simplicity, which it does great at both of those things. It's part of the reason I love this truck. This truck is very rudimentary. It's super simple. There's no bells and whistles. It's just a truck, and I love that about it. What I didn't consider is that it trades that durability and simplicity for driving performance and comfort. This thing kind of rides like a covered wagon. It's not smooth at all, and the performance of the truck is not great. This isn't a vehicle that you can kind of zone out while you're driving. You kind of got to be on your game when you're driving an old truck. At least with this one you do. There's a ton of play in the steering wheel, so you got to be kind of aware if your truck is walking around on you a little bit. And things like braking, you got to plan your braking ahead of time. This truck, it's a heavy truck. And the first time I drove this, I thought the brakes had blown out on it, because the pedal goes almost all the way to the floor before it starts to slow down. So you've got to be really aware, you've got to be looking ahead, you've got to be preparing for when you need to slow down, kind of expecting when the corners are going to come and things like that. You don't want to be flying around a corner in the rain in a super heavy truck that has, suspicious brakes at best. These might sound like I'm just listing a bunch of cons about this truck, but these are actually things that I've kind of grown to love about the truck. It's got its quirks. It's not perfect. It's not a new vehicle, and if I wanted a new vehicle, that's what I would have bought. But I've really grown to love the kind of how hard it is to drive this thing. I should also mention that if you guys are finding this video interesting or entertaining, it doesn't cost you a thing to subscribe, and it really helps out my channel. So the third thing I wish somebody had warned me about buying an old truck, and it was actually one of the things I was most concerned about, is the reliability and the maintenance on these things. I was very concerned that this wouldn't be a realistic daily driver. I was concerned that it would be breaking down all the time, and it wouldn't be reliable to get me from point A to point B. But then someone pointed out to me, these were new trucks at one point. These were people's daily drivers. These things were everywhere, 30 years ago. I do recognize that as these trucks get older and as the miles creep up, there is going to be more wear and tear on the parts. Things are going to start wearing out, they're going to start breaking. But these trucks are just so simple and so mechanical that chances are I'm going to be able to fix these parts myself. These trucks really don't have a lot of warning lights or any sort of advanced diagnostic systems. But when I was driving this truck home from Saskatchewan, I thought the transmission was failing. There was a little tiny light blinking on this column shifter here. Didn't really tell me much. But I bought a $30 code reader. I scanned the codes. I've never done that before. Learned how to scan codes. And it turned out it was just like a $20 sensor. Swapped that out in an afternoon, and the truck has been good as new since then. And I imagine if this was a brand new truck and I thought the transmission was failing, it would probably cost me a couple $1,000s before I had the problem diagnosed. And I find that because there is a little bit more upkeep on these vehicles, even though it's easier upkeep, there is more upkeep, I find that you become really in tune with your truck. You're listening for all sorts of weird noises or any new vibrations or anything out of the ordinary. You got to pay attention to that stuff because it could be something wearing out, and you gotta pay attention to whether that's getting worse or if it was just something funny going on, which, you know, does happen with these old trucks.